I'm a very stable genius. As you know, China has total respect for Donald Trump and for Donald Trump's very, very large brain. He's to celebrate the most successful first 100 days of any administration in the history of our country, and that's according to many, many people.
Hello. You know, a lot of people think that Donald Trump doesn't know what he's doing. They think he's a bit clueless, and this is quite wrong. As he says himself, he is actually quite a genius. And I think it's fair to say that no one knows more about business or about foreign trade or about politics than he does. And it's an indication of his outstanding brilliance that, well, first of all, the fact that he's had the most successful, as he said himself, the most successful 100 days of any president ever in the history of America, going back, nearly 250 years, which is quite something, quite an achievement. And he's the first president ever to realise that for years and years and years now, countries all over the world have been ripping off America. And this is an amazing discovery, and it's something he's committed himself to putting a stop to. And to do that, he's going to use tariffs. Now, the way that people have been ripping off America, and it's really, when you think about it, it's outrageous. What they've been doing is they've been selling stuff to America, and particularly China. The president is particularly concerned about China. They've been selling goods to America, and America has been paying for these goods, paying for it with dollars. Dollars been going, masses of dollars going, billions and billions of dollars going to all these different countries, particularly China, and they've used that money to spend on whatever they want. They've spent it on new factories and roads and railways and airports and schools and hospitals and so on, and they're all living much better than they used to. And this is unfair. This is absolutely wrong. You know, it's not like America where the money all goes to a few rich people, and so he's resolved to put this right, and he's very cleverly worked out that tariffs is the way to do it. And what he's done, I think it's quite complicated. I'll try and explain it. He's worked out a formula, or he and his experts work out a formula whereby you take the amount of companies a country is selling to America divided by the amount they're buying from America. You multiply that by 100, and then that's where you fix the amount of tariffs they'll have to pay. Except I think in China's case he's reduced it a bit. So initially, you remember in the Rose Garden a few weeks ago, he had those boards where he explained to everybody how much tariffs in different countries, every country in the world except for I think Russia, Belarus and North Korea, they're not going to have to pay tariffs. He's explaining how all these countries are going to pay these different rates of tariffs, and I think he'd calculated rather cleverly that all these countries are going to be panicking because, without America, how are they going to survive? And so they would be absolutely queuing up to try and do some sort of deal. And of course, he being, the greatest deal, as he says himself, the Art of the Deal, a book which apparently he might have read, I'm not sure, but was written by somebody else, and all about what a good deal maker he is. He was looking forward to, I think, to countries from all over the world coming to do deals and to beg him, as he says himself, please, give me a deal. They're all desperate.
I'm telling you, these countries are calling us up, kissing my ass. They are dying to make a deal. Please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything, sir.
Anyway, once he'd announced all these tariffs, the stock market started to go down rather seriously. And this was because people were concerned about, particularly manufacturing firms were concerned about could they get components, which they imported. Thousands and thousands of small businesses which depended upon importing goods to resell. Big companies like especially Walmart, who import 60% of their goods are imported from China. lots and lots of other retailers throughout the whole of America were beginning to get really, really concerned about how this was going to affect them. And so in due course, the bond markets also started to react. And I think that was the point at which President Trump decided it was maybe time to have a little bit of a rethink, because if the bond markets went sour, then he was going to be in big trouble, because the bond markets determined how much America has to pay on its vast borrowings. And so what he did, he called in, I think, some of his friends and said, "Look, this afternoon I'm going to announce a 3 months delay in the tariffs." And it's alleged that he called in his friends, and the friends who knew about it all went out and bought lots and lots of stock. It's alleged, and made an awful lot of money when in the afternoon President Trump announced that he was delaying the tariffs for 3 months, except for China, which is still in place. The tariff against goods from China started off at 34%, but then the Chinese, they put a similar tariff on American goods. So President Trump then increased the tariffs, and this went on in a sort of bidding war until I think it's now at 145%, the tariff for goods from China. Now, there's a certain amount of confusion in who actually pays the tariffs. Now, Mr. Trump, as you'll see, has made it absolutely clear when he was campaigning, absolutely clear that Americans wouldn't be paying the tariffs. Oh, no. People paying the tariffs would be the exporters. So, for example, if someone from China exported £1,000 worth of goods to America, previously they'd send the goods and they get $1,000. Now, what will happen is they'll send the goods, they'll get the $1,000, but then they'll have to pay back 145%, which is $14,500. So they give the goods and $14,500 to the Americans, and they get back $10,000. That's how it worked, according to what Mr. Trump had to say when he was campaigning.
Because I'm going to put tariffs on other countries coming into our country, and that has nothing to do with taxes to us. That's a tax on another country. We will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens. We're going to be a tariff nation. It's not going to be a cost to you. It's going to be a cost to another country. I heard Kamala the other day, Comrade Kamala, she said, "Oh, if you do that, he's raising your taxes." No. I'm not raising your taxes. I'm raising China and all of these countries in Asia and all over the world, including the European Union, by the way, which is one of the most egregious.
Now, everybody in the world over the age of about 6 who isn't a MAGA supporter knows that those who are importing pay the tariffs. The tariffs are paid on import, and those tariffs have to be added to the cost of the product, and it will eventually result in a great deal of inflation and, of course, shortage of stock, because if your tariffs are going to be 145, well, you're probably 145%. You're probably not going to import. You're going to say, well, I can't make a profit. If I've got to add 145 to the cost of the goods, I can't make it. So we see now that the ports of Los Angeles and Seattle and so on are all virtually empty, because they've come to a halt, because nothing's coming in particularly from China. And I think, as I said before, President Trump rather thought that people would be queuing up, a little bit like when the UK left the European Union. We were all told that people would be actually queuing up to do deals with us, but I'm not sure that many people have queued up to do deals with America. I think most firms think that most countries think, well, we'll wait and see, because the present situation probably can't go on much longer. And at the same time, President Trump has announced that billions of pounds worth of new money is coming to the country to set up factories, because the whole point of this putting on tariffs was to deter imports and instead to encourage people to set up factories all over America. In other words, to take it back as it was back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, when America was a big manufacturing country, when they manufactured everything, before they found that people in the Far East who work on much lower wages and working very diligently, and very clever people were able to supply goods at a fraction of the prices that American manufacturers had to charge. But nonetheless, Mr. Trump wants to bring back this manufacturing, and as I say, there haven't been any queues. I don't think anybody. Actually, I did a bit of research, and there's only just one country, I think, which is really desperate enough to sort of demean themselves for a deal, or as Mr. Trump put it, they're kissing his posterior.
My pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. This is really special. This has never happened before. This is unprecedented, and I think that just symbolises the strength of the relationship between us. So this is a very special letter. I think the last state visit was a tremendous success.
It was.
His Majesty the King wants to make this even better than that. So this is truly historic.
Now, if you're going to set up a factory in America to replace imports, it's worth having a look at what's involved. Supposing, for example, it could be anything. It could be plastic buckets. It could be sneakers. It could be anything. But let's say, for example, televisions. Let's say you can set up a factory to make televisions in America, so that you don't have to import them anymore from China. So first off, you need a factory. You'd have to build a factory, and you need quite a big factory, because something like making most of the things that are made in China are mass produced. So you need to be able to produce volume. So you need a pretty big building for manufacturing televisions. And so that would take you maybe, 2 or 3 years to build, and then you've got to equip it. And if you think of what's involved in a television, then maybe taking into account printed circuit bits on the printed circuits and so on, probably about 1,000 components in a television, and each of those would have to be either manufactured or sourced, and it can't be sourced from abroad because America doesn't want to import anymore, and the tariffs are too high anyway. So you'd have to get other factories setting up to make the bits for the television. But if you got all that done, you then need to install all this equipment, all this machinery and so on, and then you need a workforce. And I suppose if you're going to make televisions, you're going to need 1,000 employees, and they're all going to have to be trained, and that's going to take quite a lot of time. You can need management as well, and design people. And don't forget, whilst this is all going on, because it's going to take quite a long time, in the meantime, the Chinese will be advancing their technology, because this is an area which is changing all the time. And so you'd have to be keeping an eye on what's going on, and maybe changing your production plans as you went ahead setting up your factory. And so eventually you might have your factory 2 or 3 years down the road, ready to open and ready to start selling televisions. But because your wages are going to be many times more expensive than the Far East, and because you haven't got the expertise, because you haven't got all the resources and the suppliers and the help available that the Chinese would have, and you just don't have a culture of manufacturing, you're probably going to find your televisions are going to be quite a lot more expensive than imported Chinese televisions, even with 145% discount. And so it's very difficult to see any real benefit, except, of course, that it would teach the Chinese a lesson, because that's really, I think, what Mr. Trump would like to do. And to set up a factory to make televisions, you'd probably need, $200, $300, $400, $500 million. Be a very, very, very expensive commitment, and you'd have to start making some profit pretty soon. So it's pretty high risk in what is a very competitive world, because you're going to be competing with foreign produced televisions. And I think there were 2 problems with it, which I'm not sure whether the president has thought through. I'm sure other people have, but for example, are you going to invest all that money? hundreds of millions of dollars to set up factories. And I'm just talking about a television factory. I mean, they're everything you can think of, all household goods and clothing and bits for cars and sportswear and sports equipment and all the things we buy, which is so much of which comes from China, is all going to have their own factories all over America making all these things, all with the same cost implications. But I think the worrying factor is for anyone investing, and Trump has already said there are trillions of dollars being committed to setting up manufacturing in America. But I think you'd have to say to yourself, well, okay, I've committed all this money and I've got all this workforce that's all trained up. We're going to be more expensive, but what happens if President Trump tomorrow morning gets up and says, I'm doing away with Chinese tariffs? Where are you then? You're broke. And so it is such a high risk that it's quite difficult, despite the fact, as I say, President, and he knows, nobody knows more about investing in business than he does, and despite the fact he says that all these trillions are available. And he does say that he does admit there's going to be some short-term pain, which is fair enough, because I think there is going to be a little bit of pain. Apart from the fact there's going to be huge shortages. I mean, 60% of, as I've said before, 60% of Walmart's goods come from China, and they've only got 3 or 4 weeks stock available at the moment. Well, in 3 or 4 weeks' time, that's all going to be gone, isn't it? So, what's going to happen then? No one really quite knows, actually, because stuff isn't going to be arriving from China. And one thing for sure is that they'll be laying off. I mean, Walmart employ 1 million people. Well, quite a lot of those are going to be laid off because there aren't going to be shelves to stock, and there aren't going to be that many customers to suppliers to deal with as usual. Not only that, at the ports, for example, at the Port of Los Angeles, there are 15,000 employees handling all these containers, these millions of containers which normally come through. Well, a lot of them will be made redundant or laid off. And then there are all the truckers. I mean, it's a huge industry in America, trucking, because all these goods that arrive in Los Angeles and Seattle and New York and wherever, they all have to be trucked all over America. And a lot of these trucks are sort of owner-driver trucks, where the guy owns the truck and he's paying it off over years and years and years, and needs the money coming in every week, every month. And once that stops up, they're going to be bust. And then there are all the small businesses that depend upon imported stuff who are going to go bust as well. So as the president says, there will be some short-term pain. But once these factories are set up all over America, are making all the things that previously been imported from China, then everything should be absolutely fine. And so we'll wait and see what happens. But just remember, he's a stable genius. If you watched this far, thank you very much indeed. If you haven't already subscribed, I'd appreciate it if you do so. Or if you know of anyone you think might be interested in my videos, I'd appreciate it if you pass on my name. And so until next time, thank you again, and bye for now.